Uh,
It's
That's this.
there.
All right, rock on. Okay, so we left off, we were talking about immunizations, and I want to get right into that. Um, with the childhood vaccines, we talked yesterday about the the age when it's appropriate to start flu vaccines, and when it's appropriate to uh, start DTaP and what DTaP consists of and that kind of thing. Now, today we're going to Haemophilus influenza, or type B. HIB is basically a vaccine that is extremely important for our young ones, because one out of 200 children in the United States under 5 could HIB, and it's caused by a bacterium. It's spread through the air. It enters into the bloodstream. Now, we've had a vaccine since 1985, and you'd think we wouldn't have many cases of it, but yet we still do. Um, and it doesn't, it kind of disappointing. It doesn't talk more about this, but I'm going to post a little short video on um, the effects of HIB in children and why it's so important. Okay, that way y'all get a better um understanding of it, as if you know more than what it's saying here. And also, before everybody hangs up, make sure I'm gonna get a screenshot at the end of the lecture so that I have all y'all's names. Okay. Hepatitis A is the other vaccine. It's a virus, and we know hepatitis do what? They damage the liver. Um, Hepatitis A it says here that it doesn't cause long-term effects, because what ends up happening is it attacks the liver, but it can make that child very sick while that attack's being held, while the liver and the body are fighting it off. So we all, it's something, it is a very important and um, necessary vaccine for our children. The hepatitis A, I always like to think of it like it spreads crazy in daycares, and it's basically if you have personal contact by eating or drinking food or water from somebody. Well, in daycares, kids are always touching everything, putting in things in their mouth, that kind of thing, especially the younger ones. Vaccines are given to children over 2 years old for Hep A, and they're also highly encouraged for anyone who's going to be traveling overseas, just because of, we have um, different water safety standards in most of our states than what they do in other countries. Hepatitis B. Now, here's a hepatitis, so we know it's dealing and it's going to affect the liver. Now, hepatitis B is HBV, all right? And it's one of the ones I've always been uncertain about, because hepatitis B is transmitted through contaminated serum and blood transfusions, needles, like IV drug use, and it can be transmitted sexually. So I haven't looked too deeply, but I'm gonna post a video on this of why that's one of the very first vaccines a baby gets. They get that in the hospital, and I'm curious to know why it's one of the very first ones. If this is the way that it's spread through contamination, and what I'm wondering is if it's maybe because the mother could have passed it during childbirth. So I'm gonna look into that. I'll be learning with y'all. Um, and what it basically does is it gives a viral hepatitis. And we know that if this happens, it can be fatal. So the recommended dose, like I said, as soon as they're born, before they even leave the hospital, usually they have a hepatitis B shot. So, but I'm all when I see the the reasons here, I'm thinking, well, I don't know too many IV drug using babies, but then I start thinking, well, maybe it's because of the mom, right? Or it's could maybe breastfeeding or something like that, or what they're exposed to. So I'm going to learn about this with y'all. Hep B should be given in 4 doses. Okay, so this is why keeping up with that vaccine regimen and that schedule and reminding your patients is important. The last dose should not be given to an infant before age 24 weeks. Special attention should be paid to the CDC's vaccination requirements, okay? And this talks to infants born with positive mothers versus, I bet you that's what infants who are born with their mother in the unknown status for I guess their antibodies. Now, this is a relatively new. We've learned over the last, 20 years that HPV, and I know we talked about this when we talked about sex and reproduction, is the human papillomavirus. We know that HPV can lead to abnormal cell growth or cancer on the cervix and in the throat and the penis and anywhere that it comes in contact with. And it's actually become extremely they're starting to find a lot of oral cases of cancer due to HPV. And so children, and because you don't want to think about your child, okay, I don't want to think my kid's having sex at, because they start recommending as far as the age way before a child would even be thinking about sex. And the reason is because they want to catch them before any type of sexual activity occurs. There's 2 vaccines that are available. The most common one that you're going to see is the Gardasil, and then there's the Cevatrix, but the usually the pediatrician will say, I think if they start at age, it's as early as 9. So it can be start as 9, but they want, and let's be honest, we know that there are some kids out there that are having sex at this age, 11, 12 years old. So we want to immunize them, and we want to protect them before they become sexually active, because we want them to have the chance of picking up this virus, all right? Because the human papillomavirus is one of them ones that kind of just stick around and stay with you. And we don't want that to, when your daughter's 30, oh, she's got cervical cancer because of, sexual intercourse. And especially if it can be prevented. It can be given to females for 13 through 26. Now, what they told my daughter was they prefer, like I said, because she went in a little later. And they were like, well, have you been sexually active in this and that? She's like, no, I don't have time for all that. And so they were told her that she was still a candidate, even though she's 22. So like I said, it just depends on whether they've already been sexually active or not. Boys can be administered the same ages, and it's recommended. And you think, well, if it's we used to think it just affected and protected against cervical cancer, but now we know it's so many different other cancers that it can be helpful of protecting our children from as well. And then here's a big one that's made a lot of news recently, measles, mumps, and rubella, and that is our MMR. So you definitely need to know this, right? This is a definite. All these abbreviations, the HPV, the MMR, the DTaP, you need to automatically be able to remember what those are and what they stand for. Okay. Once a child is given the MMR, it protects them for life. Okay. An MMR is given in 2 doses, and they can be given separately. Okay. I do know some doctors who, if a child is late or behind, they'll just give both doses. Okay. Measles and the mumps and the rubella, they all are a similar family, and they're all viruses. Okay. That they, especially the measles, they can lead to, and I'm going to post some pictures and videos about this as well. And measles cause a red rash, like just dots, and it causes high fevers. It can cause deafness. It can cause brain damage. It even can cause death. So it's definitely not. And we've had an unfortunate rise in measles cases here in the United States because of a lot of parents with the whole anti-vax thing. And they're like, oh, I don't want my children to get the vaccines because it's too hard on their body or this or that, or there's chemicals. But like we were talking yesterday, this is one of the ones that, you know, even if you're the type, like I want to be cautious with my child, this is one of the ones that I highly recommend. And there are some parents that I have who are just very, very, not really anti-vax, but to the point to where, and what I tell them is, vaccinate them, but if you have to, because of, you're worried, you can spread it out. You can a month. It's not advised. It's not what's recommended, but you will find doctors, because a doctor's gonna, in the long run, they're gonna want you to even if you're waiting, a month or so in between. They'd rather have you come in and vaccinate the child than not vaccinate them at all. Okay. Now, mumps are not as serious as measles, but mumps can cause sterility in males, so they're never able to go on and have children. It can also end up with causing meningitis, encephalitis, and deafness. So if I'm telling you it's not as serious as measles, but it can, cause all this, you can see why this vaccine is vital. Okay. Rubella is known as the German measles. That's basically, it's measles, but it's just the German measles. And, or it's a short version of the measles. It's a little bit less mild, and it usually affects them for 24 hours. It's a real bad viral rash and fever, but usually up and going and feeling better within a few days. So not as severe as the regular measles. Measles are spread through close contact. They can strike adults. They can even get unborn children. If a pregnant woman has rubella, it is high probability that the infant will be born with birth defects. It's a high probability she may not even be able to carry that baby to term. So because of that, it's in the body. All right, we're moving on to the pneumococcal, or this is the pneumonia vaccine. And according to the CDC, this is a vaccine that kills the bacteria that we associate with pneumonia. And we know that pneumonia, because we learned respiratory, and we learned that pneumonia is a uh, respiratory bacteria that basically gets in and kind of floods our alveoli and doesn't allow for that gas exchange to occur. So you can see why this could be a very important vaccine in a small child, because their airways aren't even fully completely developed. Now, when you get this vaccine, it actually helps protect against several strains of the pneumococcal bacterium. Now, is there also viral pneumonia? Yes, but it's usually not going to have the damaging effects that the bacterial will. And this is why this is important. Um, the pneumo... Brian, my son's passed out on the couch and my cat's attacking my reef. The pneumococcal vaccine can spread through air, or the pneumococcal bacteria can spread through air. That's why the vaccine's vital, because we know right now what airborne viruses are doing and how easily they're caught. Winter and early spring are usually when we start seeing a rise in pneumonia. And I have had several students who have had babies who've picked this up and ended up with was RSV, pneumonia, and just pediatric ICU. Some of them even intubated and put on ventilation because their lungs just weren't working as well. Very scary. So this is not something that we want to mess around with and allow to happen because of how easily it is spread. Now, varicella, and when I was little, we didn't have this. So varicella, and make sure you know this, write this down. Varicella is chickenpox, okay? And it's really common. And when we think about chickenpox, we think about it as, oh, it's a little irritating rash that you get some bumps, and your mom gives you oatmeal baths, and you stay home from school, and you're good to go. But it can be a lot more than that. Now, this is also spread through the air. And like I said, it's mostly very mild symptoms, and it's not that serious. But there are some cases of children who have a a really severe reaction to this, and they end up hospitalized. And there have, believe it or not, been cases of death from chickenpox. So it's one of them things, it's better to go ahead and get the varicella vaccine and just prevent it, because it's a nightmare. When your kids get chickenpox, it's a nightmare because they're scratching and they're itching and they get these little wounds, and you know how hard it is to keep a kid from scratching something. We don't want that, because one of the other risks that we have to worry about is secondary infections in the wounds from them scratching because of the little dirt underneath their fingernails. And this is talking about who should get, and I'm going to post this for y'all in Teams, who should get the chickenpox, what are the risks, how can I learn more, and this is from the CDC. And if you haven't gone to the CDC, I'm going to provide that link with y'all. As a healthcare provider, it is going to be an enormous benefit to you, because if you're ever in doubt, what dose do I give? How much? Should this be kept this way or that way or whatever? It has all of the facts right there for you. So I'm going to provide that link strictly for healthcare providers. Now, polio, polio vaccine is caused by a virus. I'm going to put a small video also on Teams about polio. Most of us are not familiar with it because we've basically eradicated it. And that means that we have made it disappear. And the United States, now, Africa was one of the places that was still having a lot of issues with polio outbreaks. And just recently, I heard something wonderful that Africa has finally been able to say they have eradicated polio as well. And that's amazing. That's a wonderful thing because polio is actually a debilitating vaccine. What it does is it ends up affecting a child and causing limb disfiguration. It causes muscle paralysis. It can cause breathing issues. So, like I said, the video that I'm going to play for y'all will show you what it can do, and it's going to go back, and it actually goes back in time and shows you the polio wards and how many children, because this virus, when it hit, it was hitting kids, and it was bad. It was really bad. And there's two different types. The inactivated polio, the IPV, or the live oral polio vaccine, the OPV. Now, it's now recommended all children receive polio vaccine by injection. It's usually we're going to see the IPV. And we're actually almost, believe it or not, we're almost done. Other adult, okay, so we've gone past the babies, and let's think, because, hey, as we get older, we still need vaccines. You know, you got to go in and have that tetanus booster, it's every 10 to 11 years. So, but another one, especially when we think about our elderly, is they need the PPV. You know, I'm so sorry, I'm having yawning issues this morning. The pneumococcal vaccine as well, because like the young infants and babies and stuff, their lungs over time, their alveoli aren't working as well, especially if they were smokers. So pneumonia kills a lot of elderly. All right. And another thing is most of them did not have access to the varicella virus or vaccine. So they had chickenpox. Now, if you've had chickenpox at all in your life, you are at risk because varicella lays dormant, but it can reactivate itself. It's a very tricky thing, and it can activate itself as herpes zoster. And what that is that shingles. And so we do have a shingles vaccine. So, and nobody wants shingles. And I know we talked about that when we talked about the skin. It's that horrible red rash that usually go in the midsection or can come up through the arms and up the face, and it's extremely painful and very, very, because it's attached with the nerves. So I know that anybody who travels overseas, there's a lot of vaccines that are required to make sure that you are up to date before you're allowed to travel, before you're allowed to enter into other countries. And that's in a non-pandemic state. Right now, we can't go anywhere. This is, yeah. So don't hang up yet though. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna full screen this, and I'd like to get a screenshot of everybody who was here today. Oh, download attendance list. Yay, I figured it out. All right, guys, this is the last lecture. Tomorrow, it is the last day of the mod. Yes, 12 at Care Bear. I know. I was playing with Barbies until I was 16, 17 years old. Kids nowadays, it's crazy. We absolutely